Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hi everybody, Tom Woods here. It is episode 2710 of The Tom Woods Show, and I'm delighted to welcome Ilana Mercer and Walter Block to the program. Before I introduce them to you, let me say that people will sometimes say that you are, quote-unquote, obsessed with the subject of Israel if you talk about it a lot. And it's by pure coincidence. We had planned this out for weeks, as both our participants can attest. We had planned this out for weeks. I had not known that I would have done a couple of episodes on Israel before this one. It's just the way the schedule came out. So no obsession on my part. It's just a very important topic that everybody wants to talk about. Nothing beyond that. So let me introduce the two guests we have, and I want to explain to you what the purpose of this episode is. It's probably evident from the title, but we're going to look at what happened in Gaza after October 7th and talk about it, because of course there's been a lot of debate about this. For example, did this constitute a genocide on the part of the Israeli government and military? What was the extent of the civilian suffering? I mean, there's been a lot of this debate where it seems like the two sides can't even agree on the facts on the ground, much less the moral issues at stake. So Ilana and Walter have been friends for quite some time, both Jewish, and they wanted an opportunity just to talk to each other. And, you know, that's what the Tom Woods Show is here for. I'm going to let them talk to each other. I'm going to be, if not invisible, then a very, very minor participant in the conversation that's about to unfold. I'm just going to try to make sure that roughly half the time is for one speaker and roughly half the time is for the other. So Ilana Mercer is a paleo-libertarian author, essayist, and theorist. She's been doing verbal swordplay, we might call it, since 1999. She's been speaking out against American imperial wars and hegemony. She grew up from Israel, from which she fled, age 19, never to return. She had refused to serve in the IDF, Israel's compulsory military, and her focus since October of 2023, according to her bio, has been genocide. Walter Block, you may know as a libertarian theorist himself, who is the author of a great many books, most notoriously Defending the Undefendable. He's also a professor of economics at Loyola University, New Orleans. He has an extremely lengthy CV with many hundreds of peer-reviewed articles to his credit. So this is not really a debate with a moderator. The two of these folks wanted just to talk to each other. But the question now is, who wants to starts talking first? Did we decide that? Not really. So how about I choose? Okay.
My view is ladies first.
Okay, well then ladies first it is. Ilana, the floor is yours.
That's the typical Walter I know. And it's very telling, because maybe I should say a few words about my relationship to the topic. And to Walter, whom I met in 1999 when I was writing for opinion for Canadian newspapers. And he reached out to me, has always been scholarly and gentlemanly and friendly. And we've been, I would say, firm friends since then. He reached out in his characteristic, quirky, nerdy way. And I even remember being somewhat eidetic myself. I remember what he said. He said, you are a natural praxeologist. Are you libertarian? And that's so Walter. He took me to the Mises Institute, and the rest is history. And that's my experience of Walter. My experience of the subject is very different. I'm a natural rights libertarian, not a national interest libertarian. And therefore that puts me squarely in the solidarity camp. On the evidence, Israel, state and civil society, is engaged in an extermination campaign against resistance-based society, the Palestinians. And, you know, if we remember the debate of our Dave Smith with Douglas Murray, he sort of set down a rigid standard whereby, have you been there? You could only speak about Israel if you had been there, which is obviously, as Dave Smith rightly refuted, completely false standard. But growing up in Israel does indeed give you something of an insight. And I have been there. I have been to the occupied territories, specifically to what was called back then in, I don't want to date myself. Anyhow, I lived through the 67 and 73 war. So I'm not as old as Walter, let's put it that way. Yes, I've been to them, what was called then the Mishulash, the Hebron, Tira, and Tulkarem. I've benefited from the hospitality of the indigenous folks. I was educated in Israel, a secondary school. I consider that I have had a very good education. From English lit, sometimes better than than American schools, to high maths, and I did really well, but completely blind spot on history, other than Jewish history. When 2023 occurred, October 7, by the end of, I should just mention that come 19, I don't know that the society was particularly political, but it had a liberal persuasion. Israel was founded in socialism, and it had a liberal persuasion. Everyone was very enlightened about social justice, but the social justice was about North African and Middle Eastern Jews. Palestinians were never mentioned. The tenor of the society also, which is interesting to me to compare to the tenor these days, was much different. And I do have some backing for this. I heard Ilan Pape, the historian, one of the new historians who uncovered the primary sources for the Nakba, say very much the same. We oldies, I think third generation Israelis, I was born in South Africa, really grew up in a very different tenor, although to arrive to the point of genocide, the ethos of the society had to be similar. Anyhow, I was if not political, extremely anti-authoritarian, uniquely unsuited to obedience, I might say. And come a certain age, I refused the IDF. My grounds for that were personal, but also somewhat political. I was an avid reader of Uri Avneri. If anyone remembers, he, around about the same time, the brief time that I was on antiwar.com, Uri Avneri was a writer there out of Israel, and he founded this magazine, salacious but brilliant politically, called Ha'olam Hazeh. And the politics were progressive and extremely good on the few issues that I cared about. And also there was this tiny little notice that advertised for a group called Matzpen, which is compass in Hebrew. And that was an anarchist anti-state organization, which I visited with somewhat. So I was already toying not with libertarianism, but with certainly anti-authoritarianism. I refused the IDF, which was quite unusual then, and I am so grateful that I did that. You look at our campus children, our campus kids now being persecuted across, our universities, and I just have the gut instinct that the kids know what's potting. So come October 7, by the end of it, it was quite obvious to me and other very many people, not as many as should have been, that this was extermination, whether it was planned or ad hoc, an ad hoc type of plan, and they made it up as they went. And it used to be that during Iraq, you could rely on the liberal media for good coverage of wars. It became very quickly clear to me that liberal and right-wing media were useless. So I went, of course, I'm fluent in Hebrew, and really to get the toxicity and the septic nature of the society, you need to know Hebrew. And AI aggregation of translated items on the news doesn't do it for you. It doesn't capture that seething contempt for America, Palestine, etc., that comes out of Israel and the media. I listen exclusively to Israeli media. I read Israeli media. And of course, I sought out anybody who knows something of my work. I don't really am not that patient about fools. I sought out the best Palestinian intellectuals, some of them Western sources like Norm Finkelstein and Max Blumenthal and so on. And I read extensively, and I think I am thoroughly informed on this genocide. I began writing, and this is my last point, I began writing very long essays, 4,000, 5,000 words. They did not conform to the imperial op-ed word cap. But, and of course, I lost two of my purchases, my Christian Zionist purchase. But these essays were supported by Lou Rockwell and Tom DiLorenzo. And I would be remiss in not mentioning Ron Unz, where all dissidents go to write. So that's pretty much my background.
Hey, everybody, another Christmas is coming, and as usual, All Woods has you covered. How about getting family and friends something you know for sure they want? Delicious steaks, not to mention mouth-watering burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, delicious comfort foods, and delectable desserts from Omaha Steaks. And now, during their Sizzle All the Way sale, you can get 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $35 off with promo code WOODS at checkout. The Woods family first ordered Omaha Steaks at least 15 years ago, and the quality and value can't be beat. Omaha Steaks delivers an exclusive lineup of USDA-certified tender steaks, and their fan-favorite filet mignons have achieved the distinction of USDA-certified very tender. Omaha Steaks is a family-owned company with over 100 years of expertise in the meat industry. Save big on gourmet gifts and more holiday favorites with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their Sizzle All the Way sale. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code WOODS at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's omahasteaks.com, code WOODS. Okay, well, I won't keep intervening to say, now, Walter, it's your turn. You guys just talk.
Well, I'm glad I suggested ladies first, and Ilana gave a very nice opening, and I'll follow her pattern. She started with our personal relationship. All of a sudden, I can't see anyone. Tom, could you? Better. You all disappeared for a second, and I like to speak to people. It's hard to speak to a blank screen. I want to follow Ilana's pattern and say that we've been buddies and friends, I don't know, for more years than either of us would want to mention. And not only are she and I friends, but our spouses are friends with each other. She and her husband and me and my wife and our children have got together. So we're really good friends, and we disagree now. And I want to contrast this with other people who have been my good friends, Tom DiLorenzo, who was mentioned, Hans Hoppe, Lou Rockwell. They won't speak to me anymore. And I find that is off-putting, horrendous, I don't know, unhappy. There's something in the air when it comes to Israel that people just go berserk. You know, we have Trump derangement syndrome. I think we have Israel derangement syndrome. And I certainly don't think Ilana is guilty of that, because the proof of it is she's speaking to me and we're still friends. I'm talking about people who are so deranged that they won't even speak to a person who has a different view. You know, it's interesting, abortion. We all, libertarians also disagree on abortion in addition to Israel. And Ron Paul is pro-life and Murray Rothbard is pro-choice. And never were any of them ever canceled or excommunicated. They were friends with each other until Murray passed too early. And it's sort of puzzling to me, because probably there are more human lives involved in the abortion issue than in the Israeli issue. I mean, there must be millions of aborted babies, and the numbers are just so different. So it's a big puzzle as to why some people are so hopped up that they won't speak to you if you disagree with them. Now, obviously, they have a right to do it from a libertarian point of view. We believe in free association. Nobody should be compelled to interact with anyone against his will. But we're also scholars in the libertarian movement. And scholars don't cancel. They don't excommunicate. They debate. I'm a fan of John Stuart Mill in his On Liberty, who says, if you don't debate, if you don't understand the other person's view from a point of view, a sympathetic point of view, then you don't even understand your own view, because your own view is defined in tandem with other people's view. So I'm very happy to be with two of you, neither of who has just excommunicated me. And I've been excommunicated by some of the best people in the libertarian movement, the Mises Institute, the Ron Paul Institute, the Future of Freedom Institute, antiwar.com. Let me just talk a little bit about antiwar.com. We libertarians are not anti-war. We're only anti-offensive war. If another country attacks us, we can defend ourselves. We're not pacifists, or we need not be pacifists. Some of us are pacifists, but you need not be a pacifist. So I think anti-war is a splendid libertarian organization, but their name is problematic because we are not anti-war. We are just anti-offensive war. We're in favor of defensive war because you have a right to defend yourself. Now, Ilana mentioned extermination and genocide. I don't think Israel is guilty of that. I don't think so. If there's any genocide going on there, it's the Gaza. The Hamas, rather. Hamas on October 7th killed 1,200 people. Now, in genocide, you don't have to kill the whole group. You don't have to kill all Jews or all Christians or all Canadians or all of the group. But if you kill a systematic number, a number that is significant, a significant number, and you do it on purpose, not as collateral damage, but on purpose, that reeks of at least semi-genocide. So my view is that if there's any genocide going on, and I think there might well be, it's on the side of Hamas against Israel. They killed 1,200 people, they kidnapped 250, and of those 250, I'm not sure the exact numbers, another 100 were killed, give or take. So they killed 1,300 people, which is a significant part of the Israeli population. Now, there have been statistics as to how many soldiers are killed compared to civilians. And if you take all of the wars of all the countries that ever engaged in a war, the average is for every soldier you kill 9 civilians, which is sort of horrendous. But this is all armies, all wars, in all history. 9-1. Remember that, 9-1. Do you know what the Israeli ratio is? 1 to 1.5. Namely, for every soldier they kill, they only kill 1.5 civilians. All of a sudden, I'm losing pictures of people. Tom, could you put us back? Great. I don't know why you keep disappearing. Please stay with me.
I'm not touching a thing, Walter. It's only on your end. Just keep talking.
Walter,
okay, it'll come back.
When you say a particularly fallacious Hasbara point, it goes blank.
That's a good one. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll try to not be
avoid the Hasbara.
I'll try not to be so fallacious. Okay. Well, I just have to live with losing you every once in a while. I'm not sure why it happens, but probably it's because I'm erroneous and the machine puts thumbs down on me. And I appreciate Ilana's sense of humor. Now, the statistics are a little different in the Gaza war because what the Hamas does is it uses civilians as shields. Even the Nazis didn't do that. No other military ever did that I know of, that surrounded themselves purposely with civilians. And now what I'm going to do is come up with here are my 2 children, Matthew and Hannah, when they were 1 and 3 years old. And now I'm going to come at you, Tom. I'm going to pick on you, Tom. I don't want to pick on Ilana. Tom, I'm going to kill you. And you've got your children right behind you. And you've got a gun. You're a little stronger than me. I'm Hamas. You're Israel. And Tom, you have a choice. You can commit suicide by allowing me to kill you. That's one option. The other option is you can shoot me. And if you shoot me right here, you'll shoot my children too. My children are totally innocent. They're 1 and 3 years old, and now comes the question: well, who is guilty for the death of these children? You, me, maybe halfy. Well, I say me. I'm Hamas. I'm guilty of putting my children right over here and attacking you. And I think that this is a horrendous thing, and I think this is what Hamas is doing. Now, the ratio from the Gaza side is 1-5. Namely, even Gaza, rather Hamas, is claiming that for every soldier they kill that killed by Israel, 5 civilians died. According to the Israelis, it's 2-7 or 1-3.5. But the point is that look, if Israel wanted to have genocide, if they wanted to exterminate all of them.
Can I just, Walter, these are a lot of issues that can cover a whole hour. It's a lot to cover. Is it possible just to deal with ratios, then the banning of you by other people? Is that possible, Tom? It's a hell of a lot, because I don't want to speak for the rest of our time. You're covering a lot.
Well, I'm just sort of letting it rip, giving my views.
Okay, all right.
Do you want me to stop and you continue?
Well, do you want to deal with the ratios that you've just mentioned, or do you want to deal with the banning of yourself by other libertarians, or
whatever you want?
Should we cut it into little manageable bites?
Well, I just thought, I would speak from the heart. You would speak from the heart. And
okay. Well, where do you get these ratios? These ratios about civilians to combat casualties by Israel? The 1-2. That is entirely. I've looked that up, and that comes out of Bibi Netanyahu, indicted war criminal, and it's mainly a Hasbara point. There's no foundation in reality to it. I can tell you where the consensus is, unless you want to just reply to that.
Well, I got them by looking it up in Google and AI and the usual sources. And in my writings, I have the URLs that say this, and I don't have them at my fingertips. I can't give that to you now, but I can certainly email you all that stuff.
But no search that I have done, and we know that the deep tech is the Google is skewed completely towards Israel. I mean, it's completely, you can't get anything. But that source, the 1-2 ridiculous source, comes from mainly Bibi Netanyahu. That's what I was able to ascertain. And the way they do it, I mean, you've seen what Gaza looks like. 80-90% of the place is destroyed, and I won't even go into details. Hospitals, arid land, 61 million tons of rubble. They've dropped, and you mentioned the nuclear. Let's just finish that talking point right now. They have dropped the equivalent of 6 nuclear bombs. Do I know the raison d'etre of the serial killer? Maybe he wants to do it slowly. Maybe at some point before Israel got into the mojo of mass murder, before and knowing that it would have total impunity, maybe it was testing the waters. But they have done all those things. However, the way this undisciplined, immoral, obscene army, the IDF, arrives at these numbers, is they take, whether they like it or not. You always see in the Western media, Hamas numbers, they're not reliable, but they all use, because they're too scared to go in there, they're scared of the IDF, they all use the Gaza Health Ministry's figures about the number of dead, because they know that whether it's their religion or what have you, the health ministry, such that it still exists, tallies remains to the extent that they can identify them against their population civil registry. That's what they do. These are accurate, whether they say now that 69 or 70,000 Palestinians have been murdered, but we know that also that this is a vast undercount. So what Israel does is they halve that number. They say that 30 to 40,000 fighters have been killed. And that's how they arrive, essentially. They have no numbers on how many fighters. So that's how they arrive at the 1-to-2 ratio. And I've confirmed that with quite a few scholars who say that. But more recent, online, many sources, even Wikipedia, which is completely skewed towards Israel, admits that 87 or 83% of the casualties in Gaza are civilian, non-combatants. Now, the most recent debunking of this fantastical Hasbara point I found coming out of Israel, of all places. It was reported by three august sources, plus 972 magazine, the Hebrew equivalent of it, local call, Sicha Mekomit, and The Guardian. And who had leaked this document was the Military Intelligence Directorate, Amman, Israel. They admitted as of August of 2025 that the Israeli army believes it has killed 8,900 fighters. Now, if you deduct that, or if you calculate that as a percentage of 69,000 total deaths, what is that? 13% of the total dead. That means that 87% of the remainder are civilians. I counted, in addition, quite a few reliable sources of this ratio, and they were Action on Armed Violence out of a scholarly institute out of London, Michael Spaggett, respected academic out of University of London, and Euromed Monitor, which is a human rights monitor, one of the few that's allowed on the grounds by the Israelis, who are so proud of their deeds. So let me turn that ratio on you. If you say that it's 1-to-2, and the Israeli Amman has admitted to killing 8,900 fighters, times 2 would give you a total death of what? About 17,000 civilians. Can you look at Gaza and, using your own logic, and tell me that 17,000 individuals have been murdered? It's probably close to 250,000. I can go on with the ratios, or do you want to respond, Walter?
I don't really want to respond.
Okay, do you want me to carry on with the other? Now, you said that the resistance is committing genocide. Now, frankly, I actually think that the onus, you're asserting something that is so ridiculous, the onus is on you to provide empirical, analytical, some kind of evidence. Now, the numbers that I have of the resistance, the number of Israelis they killed, and that's also on a Google search, is 1,195 Israelis on October 7, hundreds of whom were combatants, and some were killed by the Hannibal Directive. In fact, the Israeli media, more so than our media, has covered the Hannibal Directive responsible, where Israel just let loose with firepower, much like they do in Gaza, the way they killed their own hostages in Gaza. They let loose and shelled their own. And we also have witnesses, Israeli witnesses that came forward and admitted to this. So the resistance killed 815 civilians on October 7. In addition, they managed to kill 800 IDF terrorist soldiers for a total of 1,615. Jewish Israeli citizens number, 7.75 million. What percentage is 1,600 from 7.57? 0.021. You have to provide more than just an assertion that in that prison break that was October 7, that Hamas is committing genocide.
Well, what I was going to say is I don't really want to debate something where I say yes, 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 and you say no, 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 or vice versa. I don't want to get too mired in the statistics. My own understanding of the statistics is that in all armies and in all of history, it's 1 to 9, and Israel is 1 to 1.5. So Israel is
87% of the casualties are non-combatants. That's it in Gaza. Those are the facts.
Hey, everybody, when the Woods family's health insurance premium hit $3,000 a month, we said no more. We are seceding from this system effective immediately. Well, this open enrollment, when health insurance companies hope you'll blindly sign up again for overpriced premiums and confusing fine print, I hope you'll join us. Crowd Health is the health insurance alternative. We're talking health care for under $100. You get access to a team of health bill negotiators, get access to low-cost prescription and lab testing tools, as well as a database of low-cost, high-quality doctors vetted by Crowd Health. What if something major happens? You pay the first $500, then the Crowd steps in to help fund the rest. The system is betting you'll stay stuck in the same overpriced, overcomplicated mess. And this year, it's even more complicated because most of the ACA subsidies expire, which means your prices are going sky high. Well, this open enrollment, take your power back. Join Crowd Health to get started today for $99 for your first 3 months using code WOODS at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code WOODS. Crowd Health is not insurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Joincrowdhealth.com. Hey, gang, if you're like me, you've been watching the Fed inflate the dollar into oblivion while politicians bungle trade policy and rack up historic amounts of debt, and you're wondering how to protect what you've worked so hard to build. That's why I want to talk to you about Monetary Metals, a company doing something truly revolutionary with gold. We all know gold is a safe haven asset, but let's face it, most gold just sits there in a vault, not doing much. It holds its value over time, but it doesn't grow. What if I told you there's a way to not only own physical gold, but also earn a yield on it, paid in gold, every single month? That's exactly what I do with Monetary Metals. I lease my gold with them and earn an annual yield, around 4%, in gold, not in paper currency. I keep my ounces, and every month I get more. So think about it. You still benefit from any price appreciation, like what we've been seeing in 2025 with gold pushing past all-time highs, and you also get paid more ounces of gold along the way. That's what makes this model so exciting. It's a genuine breakthrough. For the first time in decades, gold is functioning as a yield-bearing asset, just like in the classical gold standard days. The Fed can print dollars. They can't print gold. It's time to start growing your wealth in ounces, not just hoping for the best with fiat. Go to monetary-metals.com/woods to learn more and see how you can start earning a gold income too. That's monetary-metals.com/woods. Well, can I jump in here? Maybe instead of trying to get to the bottom of who's right about that, what about the issue of it's been said that all the hospitals were destroyed or all the schools were destroyed? Now, is that true? And if that's true, is that because there were terrorists in there or what? Like, how can you at least address that?
Walter? Yeah, I think.
Yeah, well, I think that the Israeli army, the IDF, is very careful about killing civilians. And what the Hamas does is it puts rocket launchers and military equipment in hospitals. It puts it in schools. It puts it in residential areas. And do the Jewish army, do they then just bomb the hospital and the school or the residential area? No. What they do, and this is almost unique in all of warfare, is they first put leaflets out there and they say, we are going to bomb you in a day or whatever it is, and we advise you to leave because we can't tolerate munitions coming, drones, weapons coming from this hospital and going into Israel. And what they do is they have these tunnels right under a hospital, and that's where they hide. So I think that, yes, there have been hospitals been destroyed. And as Ilana said, if you look at Gaza, it's mainly rubble. And I think the reason for that is because the Hamas uses its civilians as shields. And Israel, again, if I have my 2 children here as shields, they're going to get killed. And it's going to be my fault. So what I say is that the tragic deaths of civilians in Gaza are mainly the fault not of Israel, although it was Israel bullets and Israel bombs that killed them, but it was mainly the fault of Hamas. Just as when I was here and I was attacking Tom and he shot me and he killed my children. It was not his fault. It was my fault. Now, the Israeli army is ranked as the fourth most powerful in the whole world, right after China, the U.S., Russia. If the IDF really wanted to exterminate all the Palestinians and have genocide, there wouldn't be 69,000 or 80,000 people killed. And by the way, these are Hamas numbers, so you have to take them for what they're worth. They could have done a much better job. Look, in the 1967 war, Israel beat Egypt in 6 days. How many days do you think it would have taken them if they were intent on extermination and genocide to kill 2 million Gazans? I would say it would be a matter of hours, not days. Probably in 6 hours, they could have killed them all. But instead, they are very careful with enemy civilian lives. 500 or 600 IDF soldiers were killed in the war in Gaza. Why? Look, the on the ground, the Israeli soldiers are, say, just for numbers, and probably Ilana will criticize my numbers, they're twice as good as the Hamas people. They're a first world country. They have better technology, better technique. But from the air, they have a comparative advantage of, 10,000 to 0, because Hamas doesn't even have an air force. So if they wanted to save their own soldiers, they would have done it all from the air. Instead, they sent soldiers into Gaza, and they worked in booby-trapped buildings and booby-trapped tunnels, and 500 or 600 of them died. So what Israel did is, in effect, it said that the Gazan civilians are more important than 500 of our precious soldiers, which shows that they are very, very careful about killing enemy civilians. They're not given credit for it, but I think they're very careful. Now, Ilana also mentions Pape. In my book with Ellen Fruderman, The Classical Liberal Case for Israel.
Sorry, just to ask you, I did address the so-called nuclear Hasbara point that, they could have leveled Gaza, which is 50% children, if they wanted to. Well, they have leveled it. Who knows the mind of a serial killer? They've done so over 2 years. They've leveled the place. As I said, they've put down on the ground the equivalent of 66 atomic bombs. But we are not addressing how is this libertarian? If your government, British Columbia or New Orleans, if your local government thinks that in your neighborhood there is a criminal, can they eradicate? Israel has inverted the standards of morality. We have seemed to accept that you can go in and kill everybody because you believe there are some resistance fighters that you find obnoxious in a territory. But that's not the case, and that's certainly not the libertarian case. In fact, the libertarian case would say that not even if you think that someone is a criminal and you actually go house to house, which the Israelis don't. It's largely an air force, not a military. You have to bring him to trial, due process. How is that libertarian? We have to bring it back to the axiom of non-aggression. These are gross violations of every system of ethics known to man. This puts, take the natural law, the positive law, subsuming systems, the laws of war, although the genocide is not war, so that doesn't apply. The 10 Commandments, thou shalt not, you cannot kill, covet, or steal. The natural law, customary humanitarian law. Israel has violated every single system of law or canons of law or ethics that I know of. That puts Israel outside the human species, much less in the right. So you really have to explain, how can you just eliminate people because in a tiny strip that is 35 kilometers long and 5 kilometers wide, men and women live together with a resistance?
Well, I have to revert to my 2 children. Here they are. and Tom just shot me and them. Did Tom violate the libertarian strictures? I would say no. Even though innocent children were killed by Tom's bullet, he did not violate libertarian principles because the libertarian principles allow for self-defense. And I started it. Here's my knife, and I was coming at Tom, and I was going to kill him and his children who were cowering behind him. And he shot me and killed my children. Who is responsible for the deaths of these children? I say it's me, and I'm Hamas. So you're quite right. A lot of children, innocents, died, but whose fault is it? I don't think it's the Israelis' fault, even though superficially it was Israeli bullets, just like superficially it was Tom's bullets that shot my children. But it's my fault, and I think that Israel is fighting a defensive war. It was initiated. Look, Israel started in 1948, and it wanted peace. And what happened? 5 armies attacked it. And they didn't hardly have a government then. It was the Palmach and the Irgun that were fighting, which were sort of defense agencies, I'd call them. And ever since, every war that Israel has fought in, the other guy started it. Now, the reason they started is they thought that Israel was stealing land, or at least that's one of the justifications. But I'm a big fan of John Locke. And what John Locke said is that the way you can justifiably own land is to homestead it and mix your labor with it. Well, the Jews were there for 3,000 years. They were there 3,000 years ago. The Arabs only came 300 years or 200 or 300 years before now. There have been Johnny-come-latelys. They are trespassers on Israeli property. So I don't think it's true to say that, well, Gaza was an open-air prison, which is another article, another response made. I don't think that that's true. I think that the pictures just went away, and I lost my train of thought. And now the pictures are back. I'm sorry, my computer isn't as good as it should be. Again, Israel. Look, suppose Monaco were shooting bombs into France. What would the French reaction be? Or Liechtenstein shooting bombs into Germany? Well, Germany and France are civilized countries. They would go to Liechtenstein and Monaco and say, hey, what's going on here? Was this an accident? We hope it was an accident. If it wasn't an accident, we're going to kick your butt. And then what Liechtenstein and Monaco say, it was no accident. We're going to kill you. You're a bunch of vermin, and we're going to kill you all. Well, I think then France and Germany would smush these two little principalities. Well, the relationship between France and Germany on the one hand, and Monaco and Liechtenstein is roughly between Israel and Hamas, give or take. Israel doesn't have to sit there and take it. It doesn't have to. It can bomb those tunnels from which people spring out and then commit suicide bombing, and have drones and rocket ships leaving the hospitals. And I don't see why Israel is at fault. I agree that it's a tragedy, but I think the tragedies of the Hamas doing. Look, in 2005. Israel left Gaza. There were Jews there, but they all left. Israel pulled them out against their will.
What about the siege? The siege? What about putting them on a diet, not letting, they're not letting trucks, humanitarian aid now. 100 trucks go in instead of, that's Israel's idea of a ceasefire. You let 100 in, so starvation is continuing. Gazans, they might have left Gaza, but the siege remained, the absolute control of the periphery, the lack, if you are a sovereign territory, you have riparian rights. Gazans cannot even fish, they're being shot out of the water. So Israel has a military occupation in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, but let's not speak about Gaza being free. These are non-state actors, and I think that you're not advancing a case for how the libertarian axiom of non-aggression applies here. These are non-state actors. In international law, you may resist an occupation. There are no two sides to genocide. There are no two sides to brutal occupation. Now, I'd argue I'm not someone who says no to international law because it's not anarchist. I say that the law, to the extent that it comports, whether it's international, national, or tribal law. I happen to think that the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas were abiding by international law, which in that case was natural law. To the extent that all these systems of law comport with a natural law, I accept them. So does an occupied people who gets bombed periodically into submission? We see Israel's. What's the excuse in the West Bank, in the Levant, around the Levant? What's the excuse? There's no excuse. Israel has always bombed the neighborhoods. To the extent that international law comports with our natural law, to that extent, it's just. So a resistance. Israel has no right to keep bombing people into submission. They should, in fact, give these people rights. They do not have rights, and we know that. So there's that problem.
Well, I don't think they have property rights over Gaza because I think the Israelis homesteaded that area, and the same thing with the area sometimes called the West Bank. I think that the Jews.
Walter, what are you saying? That they are subjects, and therefore they don't have property rights. They don't have individual natural rights, and therefore, by extension, they can be treated as they don't have the right to life. I mean, whenever a Palestinian dies, de facto in Israeli law, but in the way you are speaking, he has two options. He's either a terrorist or a human shield. That's it. This is the only people that has to actually negotiate for its right to life.
Well, I don't think there is any right to life. That's a positive right. I think that's a typographical error. I know what you mean, namely the right not to be killed. But right to life is just the wrong way to put that. But I think we're on the same wavelength there. What I was saying is that they were trespassers. They're not the rightful owners of Judea, Samaria, East Jerusalem, or Gaza. That doesn't mean they can be killed. But my understanding is that
because they live at the pleasure of Israel, and that is a very dangerous thing, clearly, because Israel did not go in there. I would have, they have police rights. All they can do is Israel can exercise police duties. It could have gone there, but its soldiers are cowards. Israel, the IDF, Tzal in Hebrew, is not a military. It's mama's boys, serial killers. They bomb from above. It's mainly, the destruction of Gaza is mainly from ordnance from above, from tanks, and from killer quadcopters. This is not an army that goes man on man. And that's why this is not a war. And libertarians are naturally justice-seeking people. Do we support a non-state actor acting in resistance to an oppressor, or do we support a terrorist entity trying to decimate it? I'll give you another example. Do we support, are our hearts and minds and intellects with the Warsaw Ghetto uprising, the resistance in the ghetto, or do we support the right of those tanks that rolled in against the Molotov bottles of the Jewish resistance? Do we support the Nazis?
Well, I don't think we as libertarians support the Nazis, that's for sure.
We're on the side of resistance to brutal occupation.
Yes, the brutal occupation was of Gaza by Hamas. Look, in 2007, if Hamas was not shooting rocket ships, if they were not launching suicide bombing, Israel would not have made it an open-air prison. The reason it resembled an open-air prison, and by the way, it really wasn't, because a lot of the workers from Gaza worked in Israel and commuted back and forth, so it's hardly a prison. But the point is, that what Israel really wanted was to make Gaza in 2007 into the Hong Kong of the Middle East. And if Hamas was peaceful, they would have had riparian rights. The reason they were treated so badly was in self-defense. And libertarians always favor self-defense, as the example of me attacking Tom shows. I wanted to mention another issue, and that's the return of the refugees in 48. What happened in 48, and I imagine Ilana will disagree with me, but she'll have her turn to speak in a minute. What happened was the 5 armies that invaded Israel, I think it was Egypt and Lebanon and Syria, Iraq, I forget exactly which ones. What they did is they beamed in a message to the Palestinians in Israel, to the Arabs in Israel. And they said, look, go away, take a vacation, beat it, get out, go away. Why? Because if you stay, we're going to slaughter all the Jews. That's a given. But if you're there, we'll have to distinguish you from the Jews. We'll have to protect you. So go away. And roughly 800,000 or 900,000 people left. Namely, they were aiding and abetting the enemy. At around the same time, about 800,000 or 900,000 people, Jews, left Egypt and Syria and Lebanon and all the other countries. So you had a massive migration pattern. The Jews out of the Arab countries and Palestinians out of Israel. Golda Meir pleaded with them, don't leave, we can make a peaceful country. But they didn't. And now they want the right of return. And Israel integrated all of the Jews from these surrounding countries, whereas they put them in refugee camps to show how cruel the Israelis were. And now that what should have happened, what might have happened, is a land swap or something. Now, look, let's consider the Arabs who now live in Israel. Mamdani, who is the mayor-elect of New York City, said that Israel treats them as second-class citizens. But they are judges, they are policemen, they are soldiers, they are college professors, they are lawyers. They even have a political party in the Knesset. Israel treats those Arabs.
Incidentally, was banned the other day.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The political party, the Palestinian political party, was actually thrown out of the Knesset by our ally who shares our values, our democratic values.
The Arab political party is not in the Knesset?
Well, at one point they were thrown out or threatened with that.
No, at one point, what's his name? Party was thrown out. What's that Jewish guy? Rabbi
Kahana was also. Kahana was ruled a terrorist, so indeed they did outlaw him.
Right. Okay. Well, they might have viewed them there, but right now there is a political party there, and look, one of my favorite groups is a group called Queers for Palestine. And you might think this is crazy because if they went to Gaza, they'd be killed. If they went to most of these Arab countries, they'd be killed. The point is that even though Arabs are in some sense second-class citizens in Israel, they are treated better in Israel than they are in the Arab countries. The proof of that is the migration patterns. How many of them are leaving Israel? None that I know of. Rather, Arabs are trying to get into Israel because Israel treats them better. There are gay pride parades in Israel. There are no gay pride parades in Egypt or Syria or Lebanon.
Well, that the woke West has destroyed a traditional community in the name of gay rights and has supported genocide. Is that a surprise? Is that the hallmark of classical liberal values? I doubt it. Indeed, Gaza is a non-woke society. I've watched these people very closely, and Walter, I come from Hasbara. I was brought up in this. I've shamefully put my mind to make very convincing arguments for Israel based on this Hasbara nonsense. But I reckoned with my conscience and with the facts. I watched for 2 years, and as I say, I have the command of the Hebrew, and I saw on the one side, and you tell me which is which, I saw a debased, vulgar, septic society from which no elevated libertarian idea was even uttered, much less practiced or suggested. I'll say it's Israel. And I saw, on the other hand, one of the least propagandized societies I've ever encountered. These were the people that I believed. I believed all this hasbara about Palestinians. We've heard this. In fact, I was actually seeped in hasbara when I came to America, more than any place, because of the overwhelming Christian Zionist sentiment. What I saw was people who speak the language of liberty, resistance, wanting self-determination, holding their babies murdered and wanting a future for them. And not only that, from janitor to judge, and Gaza had courts. Gaza had courts before they were destroyed. None of them spoke anti-Semitically or crudely as the critical mass of statements we've heard coming out of Israel. Starve them, they're all animals, they're this, they're that. Nothing. There was none of that. It was a very genteel culture. And moreover, I always thought that the women, many of them, some of them are not swaddled, but those who are oppressed. I would say that the women are some of the strongest women I've seen. I don't see strong women in our campuses, with the woke and the tears and the the snowflakes thing. I saw women who can live through genocide. Remarkable people. So that's. I had to say this honestly. I'm not going to cover for a debased. I mean, I am fluent in Hebrew. I speak. When I left Israel, I read Shai Agnon. I don't think is one of the most brilliant Israeli writers. Impenetrable Hebrew he wrote. I don't think an Israeli knows who Shai Agnon was. I saw none of the elevated sentiments, culture, or civilization that you speak up for. Yes, there's gays. I mean, we saw very liberal people wearing intimate lingerie of Palestinian women. And you know what? They made fun of them. I can understand what they say. They call them sharmuta. That means sluts, on video uploaded to TikTok and YouTube. Yes, they propose over the dead bodies of Palestinians to men and women alike. That to me does not mean the center of civilization.
Let me intervene here, because this not being Joe Rogan and the show not going 3 hours, I have to intervene to tell you that you have about 5 minutes left to say your final things to each other. So, Walter, go ahead.
Well, Ilana also mentioned Ilan Pappé. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. In my book, The Classical Liberal Case for Israel, co-authored with Alan Fuderman, will quote Pappé saying that he's not after the truth. He's after supporting the Palestinian side of the debate. And I think that anything he says has to be taken with not a grain of salt, with a bucket of salt. The point I was making is that Zoran Mamdani is critical of Israel because it has Arabs as second-class citizens. Yes, it's true. Israel will accept me as a citizen because I've been bar mitzvahed, and if I went to Israel, I could be a citizen without any question. Whereas if my Arab neighbor went there, that wouldn't apply. So,
but Walter, the real, we can speak about. We can speak about these broad theories or points of hasbara, which is propaganda explanation. Yes, you as a Jew can go and take up a home, but as we speak, Israel has a Byzantine system that allows. It's not even Kafkaesque. We traffic in words. Words fail. That allows the soldiers, I can tell you, as we speak, are destroying homes and villages, ancient villages, in order to apportion homes for people like you, should you choose to migrate to Israel. So you're right. But we need to look not only at the hasbara points, but reality on the ground, what's happening. They don't have property rights. They have no right to defend themselves in the occupied territories.
Well, I don't think they should have property rights there because I think they're trespassers. I think the rightful owners of those, Judea, Samaria, sometimes called the West Bank, and East Jerusalem, and also Gaza, is Jewish property because, according to John Locke, they were the first people who homesteaded there. But the point I was trying to make is that if you think that Israel treats the Arabs as second-class citizens, the point I'm trying to make is that they treat them better than the Arabs are treated in other countries. So Arabs are trying to get into Israel, and none of the Arabs in Israel are trying to get out of Israel. Look, that's a very important way to determine which country is more civilized. People are trying to get out of East Germany and into West Germany, out of North Korea and into South Korea. So from this, we can deduce that West Germany and South Korea were better for them. Blacks were trying to get out of the South in 1930 because they were being lynched there. So migration patterns tell us a lot that otherwise we wouldn't know about. I think that Ilana, you also said that they didn't fight man to man; they fought for the air, fought from the air. No, 500 or 600 military IDF soldiers were killed in the war.
That's right. Because Walter, you can't subvert the truth here. I've watched every single resistance operation. You can go to John Elmer's, a military analyst. I've watched. You can't cite a battle of Khan Yunis. You can't cite the Battle of Rafah. There are not battles. There's an extermination campaign. I've watched these young men in sandals, and Yahya Sinwar died on the battlefield, throwing his weapon at the quadcopter killer from the air, which he didn't go up against him. I've watched these people. They fabricate their own weapons out of ordnance dropped by Israel in perpetuity. They can do that. And they do what the Warsaw Ghetto resistance do. They run towards the tank and ignite it. Of course, YouTube doesn't allow us to look at the conclusion, but I've watched all these operations. The Israelis sit in their tanks or they drop ordnance. They are cowards. They are cowards.
Well, I guess I'll get the last word. And my last word is to thank Ilana and Tom for having this discussion. It shows that we libertarians can agree without being disagreeable. And that's very important. If we want to have a movement, we just can't eliminate vast numbers of people because they disagree with us on one issue. I mean, there are many, many issues where we disagree. I mentioned abortion, voluntary slavery, immigration. There's whole bunches of issues so just from a pragmatic point of view, it's weird to excommunicate and cancel people with whom you disagree. Because, the joke is that if you ask 10 libertarians a question, you'll get 11 answers.
Well, genocide is not on the same continuum. I'll just say that briefly, but as immigration and drugs and abortion, it's not on the same. And I would say that there are no extenuating or mitigating circumstances attached to the crime of all crimes. It is not a once-off crime, and it is not a crime to which you can attach legal or moral defenses. There just aren't any defenses. In fact, this debate should not have happened. I want to debate and I want to speak with you, Walter, but those 2 points there are no two sides to genocide. There are absolutely no defenses to it. And I will, conclude by saying that what's the legal principle? Res ipsa loquita, right? The thing itself speaks. Look at Gaza. You don't have to, reality is truth. You don't have to know anything about the history to know the truth about Israel. All
I can say is that if Israel wanted to exterminate them, there wouldn't be any of them left after 6 hours.
And all I can say is the truth about Israel is now ahistoric. Whether you know 48 and Nakba or just look at Gaza, that's Israel.
Well, it was good to speak to you, and thanks again, Tom, for having us.
Lovely to speak to you, Walter.
Take care. I'm glad we're still friends.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Good.
Thank you to Ilana and Walter, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.